Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we are bringing in real actual probes to Eve. First things first, let's get rid of the thrust limit on our mainsail. There we go. And let's go ahead and warp on in to Eve. That'll only take a couple of days here, and hopefully we're not going to have any issues with deployment of these satellites. They're packed very, very tightly. In fact, they're not really satellites. But we're going to bring this on in, and is that Eve right there? Yes, that is Eve. Hello, Eve. You are approaching very quickly, and here we are. Here we are. Okay, so this is going to be 4 minutes and 42 seconds, so we want to burn this at T-minus... Hang on a moment. We want to burn this now. We're already late on this burn. 2 minutes and 24 seconds was when we wanted to burn this, but the auto-warp brought us in too far. That's exciting. Okay. So with the auto-warp bringing us in too far, that is potentially going to be problematic. We're not yet at the apoapsis. We may want to stop this burn. We're in orbit here. We may want to readjust this. And in fact, I'm going to. At the periapsis here, next orbit, we're going to need to do this because it definitely brought us in too close. So we're going to need to then bring this down next orbit to have a periapsis of not that, but rather around 92 kilometers, like that. Okay, so that's going to be what we need. We'll go ahead and warp to that. That'll be at 2 minutes and 4 seconds. Hopefully it won't put us too close this time. Good, it didn't. Okay, we'll just lock to the maneuver node. 2 minutes and 4 seconds is... No, that's physics warp. I wanted to time warp. 2 minutes and 4 seconds is when we want to burn this at the T-minus. So let's bring this in to about... Oh, that was an interesting pop in there. We want to burn this now, though. Wonderful. And so we burn this. And we should be able to just bring our periapsis down, and then our apoapsis will be 106 kilometers, but that's, I think, completely fine. Wonderful. This will be a pretty good parking and deployment orbit for us, and as far as actually deploying these goes, it's going to be very, very interesting. I'm not sure how I'm going to pull it off. They're packed extremely tightly, and I don't know if they're actually going to survive the jettisoning process. But I have a bit of an idea on how I want to pull it off. I'm going to physics warp this burn. It's going to be a little bit lengthy of a burn, to be sure. We're just going to bring this on down and make it as non-energetic as possible. We appear to be doing completely fine on electric charge, and that's wonderful. So we'll just bring this on down. Have another roughly minute and a half of burn time left here. We're currently at the periapsis, or passing it by currently. And that's completely okay. Just continue targeting this point, and we will be fine. Having our periapsis, I'm going to come out of the physics warp. We'll be fine having our periapsis come all the way around. We're circular now. And we're becoming a little bit elliptical. We're aiming for 92. That's good enough. Apoapsis of 108. What's our actual inclination at? 178 degrees. Technically, we're retrograde and 2 degrees off of equatorial. That's okay. We don't necessarily care about that. So, at this point, we are going to warp over to the dark side, over here. And we're going to pop over like so. And yeah, our electric charge is going to drop. We're going to continue to warp over to the periapsis. Okay, and we can see where the Terminator is here Let's just go ahead and align ourselves retrograde. We should have plenty of power to make this happen. And I'm going to quick save here. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it may be buggy. So we're going to need to open up an air brake here. Or all of our air brakes, I guess. And then I'm going to pin open this decoupler. And then we're going to undeploy our air brakes. Like so. These seem to be physicsless parts, so I think we're going to be okay. Now that we have that pinned open, we're going to warp forward a little further so that we have sunlight and we can charge all of our batteries up. Wonderful. And we will stop this warp. Position ourselves retrograde. Okay, fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. It gets ejected in a kind of funky way. Okay, what's this orbit? That's okay. That is fine. Let's go ahead and orient this retrograde. We can deploy these air brakes immediately, I believe. And we can begin this burn basically now and see how this works. So let's deploy this. This all looks correct. So we're going to burn this out retrograde. We have about 65 seconds of burn time. We're going to drop the periapsis to about 60 kilometers. Like that. Excellent. We do have a heat shield underneath here. And we'll decouple this when we need the heat shield. I'm not sure if that's going to break the air brakes. I think they're technically attached up here, though. I think that this attachment is purely visual. So we'll see. We no longer need that decoupler pinned open. Okay. We're going to enter Atmo pretty shortly. We should probably try to bleed off all of this speed once we are in Atmo with surface velocity, is my guess. And we have lots of electric charge right now. So let's just head on into the atmosphere. We were still going up very briefly there. We just hit apoapsis. And yeah, we're drifting off. So at about 90 kilometers, we'll snap out of this. Okay. There we go. Fantastic. And let's try to bleed off as much horizontal speed as we can, starting now. This is by far most efficient in vacuum, so we'll do that. Whoa! What's happening? What was that? I think the camera was freaking out. I think. I'm not entirely sure. We didn't seem to start tumbling, so that's good. I just want to bleed off all of this speed. Like this entire tank. I say entire. It has like 4 units of fuel in it. Not much at all. But I just want to get all of this burned. About 20 more seconds of burn time. So we should be... Yeah, we're completely suborbital at this point. That's great. We have about 10 seconds left to burn here. And in theory, we should be able to detach this, and that's the goal here. Okay. Technically, we don't want to be following this. Technically, we want to be up here. That's a little awkward, to be sure. And we want to be focusing retrograde. Okay. So the engine portion we don't care about. I don't know why it followed that. Maybe the hex up here was not the root part. Or the Octo 2, rather, was not the root part. I'm not sure. We're definitely seeing some heating effects on these air brakes. We could change the deploy angle, and that may alter things. But I kind of want to be air braking as efficiently as possible right now. Yeah, look at that. We are slowing down pretty dramatically. Now, our heat is... Yep, gonna do that. This isn't shocking to me. We probably want to have these air brakes deploying at a much lower angle. I don't know what angle we want it to be at. I'm not surprised that we're blowing up here. Our heat shield is apparently fairly ineffective. Well, maybe our heat shield is not ineffective, actually. So we probably want to come in shallower with our next attempt. I'm not shocked that this happened, to be clear. How's our ablation looking? I mean, this heat shield is likely to run out, if you ask me. I suspect it will run out. So we definitely came in too aggressively. There's no doubt about that. So we're going to change our trajectory pretty dramatically when we're coming in, but I want to see just how close we get here. I mean, we're at 56 kilometers right now, 55. That's not bad. I think we're going to lose our core to heating. I'm fairly sure. That's actually our heat shield burning off there. And taking the core... No, the heat shield didn't. The core burned off. Okay. I'm not shocked by this, but we actually got surprisingly close. Surprisingly close. Now we have no way to do anything at this point. But we actually are going to have parts that could have survived this. Fascinating. Okay, so lessons have been learned from that attempt. We're going to switch back to our probe launcher. Actually, we're just going to head back to the space center. We can't leave at this point. Right. Can we physics warp? Can we, like, purposely auto-destruct this? Because this isn't going to survive impact, but it's going to take a while to get to the ground. I'm physics warping right now. I wonder if this is going to count as a splashdown. Look at this. We almost don't even need a... Maybe we don't need a parachute. What is this going to get down to? We're still 17 kilometers up. I know the atmosphere on Eve is ridiculous, but this is kind of bonkers. Our heat shield did survive. It was our Octo 2 that did not. And that was the core issue there. If the Octo 2 had survived, then it would have been great. If the air brakes had survived, then it would have been great as well. So we need to experiment with a couple of things. We need to experiment with the angle of attack for the air brakes so that they don't burn off. And we need to experiment with what height to set our initial periapsis at. If we do those two things, I think this will work. And we have 8 more attempts. So that's wonderful. Right now, all I'm seeing is what this speed gets to for terminal velocity. That's actually kind of amazing looking as we were coming through the atmosphere there, and then we got through the atmo and we saw this. Yeah. So this is not surprising. The vessel was destroyed. This is what we expected, in all honesty. So we're going to just head to the tracking station. I was not expecting us to have a successful landing our first time. So, we're going to fly this. And we're going to try again. We did find an ocean. We did not have a successful splashdown, but that's okay. So, at this point, we can deploy these guys. And we can set the deploy angle to be maybe a little less than 70. I think we'd be safer to have it be like 35. Okay, and then I'm going to pin this guy open. And we will undeploy our air brakes. And we'll pitch that guy on off of there. Excellent. Okay, what's our orbit looking like? Sure. So once we are about here, I want to get our apoapsis down, or rather our periapsis, down to be around 80 kilometers only. But I want to move where that periapsis is. So I want to move it to be like over here. And then bring it up. About like that. Okay. Now we can't actually point at the maneuver node with this guy, and that's okay. we will just do it manually. And we will point there. We'll go ahead and warp to that. 21 seconds. So 11 seconds, or really 10 and a half. That's okay. And we should have enough electric charge to make this happen. We'll just position there, and we will go ahead and warp a little bit further. 10 and a half seconds. Okay, so we'll burn it now. I was a little late on that burn because I wasn't expecting to press spacebar, but all is good. And I will go ahead and deploy these air brakes at only 35, so that we hopefully get less heating effects. We'll call that good. What's our periapsis at? 80 kilometers. Wonderful. Then, as we are approaching periapsis, we are going to burn retrograde here and circularize. Now, we're going to have atmospheric drag, so it's not actually going to be circularized. But essentially, I'm only going to use this as a timer. I want to burn at the periapsis, pure retrograde. Okay. So we're going to be entering Atmos shortly. And we want to bleed off just as much speed as we can without burning off our air brakes. That's the idea here. So we're going to be... Actually, we don't even need this maneuver node. We can see our periapsis timer here. And how much time do we have left in this burn? 48 seconds. So at T-minus 24 seconds to periapsis, assuming our engine is still alive, that's when we want to do this. Wonderful. So we are, of course, about 5 minutes away from that periapsis, and we're actually never going to hit it. Now that I think about it. We are never going to hit that periapsis. So, I'm just going to maybe eject this as is. And we'll stick with this guy, of course. We are currently accelerating, and that's okay. I want to bleed off as much energy as we can here. And I do think that we're not going to exit the atmosphere again. We only need to drop 18 kilometers in our apoapsis. So let's see how this ends up going. Trying to keep this deploy angle at 35, and we'll see how that ends up going. Having some cooling on the octo, or placing the octo on the other side of the reaction wheel and battery may have been smarter. We want to be locked to retrograde. Thank you very much. You can see here we are not accelerating or decelerating. We are currently holding speed. But our apoapsis is dropping dramatically, and time to periapsis is increasing. We will never arrive at periapsis. We are now decelerating, and that's great. We want to keep pretty high up in this atmosphere for as long as possible. We can already see some heating thermometers on this air brake. Again, some cooling may end up being necessary. May have been necessary. Tenses are hard. However, we're relatively okay if the air brakes burn off, as long as they bleed off a pretty major amount of speed, right? We can already see they are heating up pretty dramatically here. We're 84 kilometers up right now. We are bleeding off a little speed. We're still about 1 kilometer per second faster than I'd like to be right now. So, other options. We may want to try to drop more straight in. I don't know. We may be better off sitting high in the atmosphere like this, though, for a good long time. This one's getting very close to burning off. Can I alleviate that by rotating? Yeah, it seems to be the one that's up here that is getting the most heat. So if we do something like this, we might be able to buy ourselves a little bit of time. just rotate our way through the atmosphere here. You can see we're draining our electric charge, but that's okay. We are decelerating. Not necessarily as quickly as I'd like to see. And our air brakes are going to burn off. That's only a matter of time. But I think that doing this is indeed buying us additional time with the air brakes, which is good. The other thing that we could potentially do is deploy the air brakes later. And that may end up being worthwhile. Yeah, there goes one. There goes two. I'm going to stop rotating. The other two will go very shortly. There they go. Whoa! We lost the Octo already? I didn't expect to lose the Octo that quickly. I'll be honest. I really didn't expect to lose the Octo there. That was a little shocking to me. Well, all we've got left is the air brake. There's this, of course. The engine structure. It has no control. It's actually still alive without the air brake. Should we not decouple this? And use this as a secondary heat shield? I feel like that's a thing we should do. How long does this end up surviving? Because I did feel like this was wasted fuel, and it kind of was. Let's see how long this survives. Does this fully survive re-entry without a heat shield? If it does, that's bonkers. Because this never had any sort of heat shield. It also didn't have the benefit of the aero brakes. (2,200 meters per second). This is Kerbal orbital velocity. Overheat is going down. I think this survives. Which means I think we have our strategy. We may have to turn down the aero brakes even further than 35 degrees, have them be like 10 degrees. But look at that speed. It survives. This is even better of a heat shield than our heat shield. Baffling. Okay, we're going to physics warp the rest of this fall. We have to wait until this hits the ground before we can do anything else. Which is very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. I wish we could physics warp faster than this, because this is going to be a little while before this hits the ground, for sure. But look at that speed drop. I think we have our plan. I do believe that we have a plan now. I really do wish that we could just terminate this flight. Can we activate the abort action group? No, we can't do that. Unfortunate. I wish we could just terminate this flight as is without having to wait for it to drift very slowly down to the ground. That would be nice. Luckily, we do have physics warp on our side. But it is just not enough. We're about 9 kilometers above the ground right now. And I mean, terminal velocity isn't low enough to not require a parachute, but the single parachute will definitely work. If we can come in at a reasonable velocity, using this as a heat shield, even if our aero brakes end up burning off, that's okay. I think this is a completely viable plan. I just need to execute it. We've got a few more chances, but all is looking good. We're about 1.2 kilometers above the surface now. Hello, surface. This is looking like it's coming down on land. This would actually be a decent landing site. Of course, we do have a bit that survived. We've got a bit that survived. Did it actually live that? Like, are we still tracking the debris? Let's toggle debris. Landed at Eve. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a landing site. It worked. I guess it worked. So I'm going to fly, quote unquote, and we are going to just take a closer look at this now that we know what's going on. Landed at Eve's Highlands. Yeah, this would actually be a pretty solid landing site. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do to, like, rename this or anything. Touchdown confirmed on Eve. Okay, yeah, we have landed on the surface of Eve. That's true. That did get us a lot of money. Now, I'm still going to send down probes. We need a splashdown on Eve, and I want to explore a few other areas of Eve as well. I've never really done all that much on Eve other than this series, so that is absolutely great. But we've got ourselves a splashdown, or not a splashdown point, but a landing point. So I'm going to call that one a success. And I think we have a decent plan for how we're going to bring down the other probes as well. As far as the actual launcher, and I don't right now want to toggle debris. As far as the actual launcher goes, we're probably just going to leave it in orbit for now as a communications satellite. It does have that relay probe, and I did that on purpose so that we would have some form of communications here. But yeah, we've still got quite a number of opportunities here. We already found a landing site, and that is super great. Super great. I'm going to change these to a deploy angle of 10 degrees, and we'll give that a go with our new non-decoupling strategy in the next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.